Yeah, just a quick introduction. So I did study at Mizzou. I graduated in 2011, and I essentially was a got started with studying abroad in Italy in Bergamo, and then after that, I fell in love with working and traveling, and being abroad. So I decided to essentially just see what other options I had out there. And the next summer, or as soon as I got back from studying abroad in Italy, I basically applied to be a student manager for the study abroad program. So I was selected to be the student manager for Prague. And the cool thing about that was one, I'd never been to Prague, but two, the program was a lot smaller. So we had a lot of work ahead of us to try to grow that program to kind of get on the same level as a place like Italy. So for about 2 years, I was taking students from Mizzou over to Prague and absolutely just fell in love with the country and the city. And when I was graduating, I decided to just move abroad to Prague and ended up working and traveling for the next 10 years after that. And I've still, to this day, living overseas. I just got back from a 2 month trip to Thailand, and I'm currently in Tbilisi. And if anybody knows where Tbilisi is, leave a comment in the chat. It's kind of a unknown country, but it is a really beautiful place. I like to describe it as a cheaper version of Switzerland, maybe like 100 times cheaper, but has beautiful mountains, really off the beaten path, but great food, great place to live. And I've been based here for the past 4 years. So they have their own language, their own cuisine, and they actually invented wine, which is a very cool fact about where I live. So that'll give you guys some research to figure out where Tbilisi is in the world and where it is on a map. So a few other things that just to extend on my background is I did go on to publish a best-selling book called Global Career: How to Work Anywhere and Travel Forever. Eventually, I started getting a lot of questions when I was living overseas about where to go, where should I go when I'm in Prague, where should I go in Italy, and this got me to start a travel blog. So from there, I started a travel blog because I was sending the same 5 to 10 Facebook messages to people and eventually just turned those into blog posts. So that was one way that I got started with this and got started making some income online with that blog. And that slowly pivoted to me writing and publishing a book, but there's a lot of stuff that happened in between. I went on to build one of the world's fastest growing remote companies, a company called Empire Flippers. And this was a company that I helped scale up to over 100 remote employees on almost every time zone around the world. And during this time, it gave me a lot of insights into the online business space because it was a marketplace to buy and sell profitable online businesses. So, learning about this, growing these businesses has let me kind of learn about a lot of unique areas of the business realm and also about travel. So it's given me a lot of great insights, and I've published some of these insights on Forbes, Entrepreneur, CNBC, and even Lonely Planet. So the reason that this is maybe useful for you guys is you're in a very unique position right now. The world landscape has changed. I published my book in 2018, and when I was getting started, there was a lot less remote work and travel opportunities out there. So, what I want to talk to you about today is how you can go ahead and start your own working from anywhere and traveling forever, but not just like the theory of it. Like, how do you actually go ahead and take the theory and implement it to something that you can take action with? Maybe this summer, this winter, it starts with studying abroad and then actually getting into something where you're working abroad. So, for everyone who sticks around to the end, I know you guys are kind of obligated, but I do have a free gift for everyone. So, do stay tuned, and that should be something that I hopefully all of you will enjoy. And so the three kind of portions of this talk is I want to focus on the why. Why do you want to potentially live overseas? Why do you want to remote work? And kind of go over some of the benefits, the pros, the cons, and maybe a few things that a lot of people don't talk about. Then I'm going to talk about what are the 3 or 4 fastest paths to becoming a successful digital nomad. And like I said, we'll have a free gift for everyone. So What exactly is a digital nomad? I think this is a term that gets used quite a lot. And I think if you asked 100 different people, they would have 100 different definitions or variations of it. Essentially, digital nomads are people who can work from their laptop, their phone, and can live anywhere in the world and essentially become nomadic people. They can live in any country, any city, and at the will of time's notice, you can go ahead and switch your city or location. You're not physically tied to any place. So it's a really flexible way to live your life. And a lot of times people are working from coffee shops, from their home, libraries, co-working spaces, or some people are even working from RVs. So there's a lot of cool ways to go about doing it. And the cool thing about digital nomadism, there's a lot of subsectors that fall underneath it. If you're interested in entrepreneurship, you can become a nomadic entrepreneur, somebody who's running and building a business that can be run from anywhere in the world. There's freelancing options. There's also remote working options. And I'll kind of go through all of the options out there from what I would recommend at the beginning, where you're at now, starting there, and then building up to those other options, because usually there's going to be some sort of skill limitation. Skill and experience is something that you kind of need to have to master becoming an entrepreneur. You need to have skills and experience in something. And so, what are the easiest and best ways to do that is I like to say you can get paid to learn some of those skills and get some of that experience. So, that can come into basically remote working and becoming getting a location independent remote job. And so before we get into it too much, like why does this lifestyle, why is it appealing to anybody? Why do people enjoy it? So three of the biggest uh, sectors of why people love digital nomads and why it's become so popular is you can essentially live a better life and save more of your money. So let's say, for example, you get that New York City local job. You're living in New York City, you're living in Manhattan. Maybe you're making six figures out of college, right? But the amount of money that you actually save at the end of the day is probably going to be around the same as if you lived in St. Louis, Missouri, or maybe a little bit less because the cost of living is so much higher in New York. So, what if you could take that same New York salary, but live in Mexico or live in Thailand, where it's 10 times cheaper to live? You can essentially have that six-figure salary and keep a lot more of the money. So, you essentially have way more profit and you can have a much higher lifestyle for a fraction of the cost. The second big thing is the time flexibility. A lot of remote working jobs and a lot of these opportunities have some element of time flexibility. A lot of smaller remote work companies allow you to essentially just have a KPI or project that you're working on, and you just need to get it done by a certain deadline. If you're able to get your work done by certain deadlines, you can do it in the morning, in the evening, in the afternoon, or wherever. They're more focused on your outcome instead of the input or the actual hours that you're working on it, right? So that's another thing is time flexibility. And last but not least, location freedom. You can work in any place in the world and you can go ahead and switch up at any time. So again, there's going to be some downsides to this, right? Like anything, I do think the digital nomad lifestyle isn't for everyone. And there can be some other downsides like, you know, dealing with faulty internet, being away from family and friends, showing up in a new city and not really being able to integrate into the culture. Again, this isn't it is a glamorous lifestyle, but like anything, there is shortfalls and some shortcomings. And again, it's important to be aware of those. So, study abroad and internships. This is where I essentially got started. I studied abroad in Italy. I did an internship in Ireland, and then I essentially transitioned into working for the University of Missouri as a study abroad student manager, and then pivoted to living overseas. This was something that was really essential because when I studied abroad, you would not really understand who was going to love it and who wasn't. There was a few people that were so adamant that they were going to love it. They were so excited, but they got homesick. They didn't really love the work-life balance. They just became a little bit overwhelmed by the whole experience. And it was something that they enjoyed for their time, but they didn't really love it. They didn't get hooked on it like people like me. But the good thing about study abroad is you can get a little bit of a taste of it to see how you like it. And you can learn and get credit for whatever you're studying. So if you're in the business school, you can actually get business credit that goes towards your graduation, right? So that was the great thing about the study abroad program. And I highly suggest people looking into it. I actually offer a study abroad scholarship for through the TCOB business school. So if anybody has a financial barrier, there are scholarships out there, my scholarship and other people offering scholarships so you can study abroad. The other thing is, you get real travel experience and real world experience. So studying abroad, doing internships abroad are not only things that make you stand out on a resume, but they give you actual talking points and experience that are going to separate you in your job hunt, right? So if you had an internship in Ireland, it's going to be a little bit more of a talking factor as long as you did something interesting and something that gave you real world experience. It's going to separate you from a lot of other job seekers. So this can be a great way to really stand out on a resume and to also get some real world experience. So that's what I would suggest is if you're in university now, looking to study abroad and look into internships abroad. And ideally, what I would recommend is to do a month study abroad and then look for an internship afterwards. So something like that. And I know the programs, a few of them offer something similar to this. So the next part would be after you're graduating, if you want true flexibility, you don't have to do what I was doing. I was basically moving to a country and finding actual local jobs. So my first few jobs were working at a university where I was actually going into a university a few times a week. And now you can do that online. You can teach English from your laptop. You can work for a remote startup. There's so many great non-technical remote jobs out there that even after COVID, it's surprising how many people don't realize this, that there's really so many opportunities. If you're an accounting major, if you're in finance, real estate, I guarantee you there is some remote job out there. And there's going to be a remote job out there. It's just you need to know where to look for these non-technical remote jobs. So now is the best time than ever to find remote jobs out there. And what I would say is if you're looking to find a job after you graduate, focus on a process. For me, applying to, 5 to 10 jobs a day, having a weekly milestone where I'm finding and applying to jobs every day. And like every week, I was like, I needed to apply to 50 jobs. But more importantly, I needed to have my resume optimized. I needed to have my job search criteria optimized before I even started that type of stuff. So if you don't have a strong foundation, it's not going to make sense to start applying for jobs until you really have a good resume, until you really have some good experience, and you go about showcasing that. The number one issue I see with resumes, and I've looked at thousands of them, is they read like job descriptions. Your resume should focus on results. I did this for company A, I can do it for you. And here's the results I achieved. If you build your resume in that way, you're going to have a lot more success. So just something to keep in mind if you're going to go this route. So the pros and cons to remote work versus some of these other options, the pros are going to be you have consistent income. You're going to be getting a paycheck every month or every 2 weeks. You're probably even going to have some benefits like insurance, vacation days. The startups that I've worked at, they even offered unlimited vacation or mandatory 4 or 5 week vacations. So you can find some pretty cool benefits out there in the remote work realm. And especially for smaller startups, you can really have a big impact in the company. A 10,000 person company versus a 50-person company, you're going to be able to grow a lot more and you're going to have a lot more impact. And there's openings for almost every experience level out there. The cons, though, is you still have to work 40 to 60 hours. So even if you're living abroad, that can still be a tough thing, right? You still have to figure out how to build your work-life balance around that 40 to 60 hours of work. And especially working at startups, again, there's probably going to be on the 60 hours per week realm of things, depending on the startup. And with remote working, it really can bleed into your Saturdays, Sundays, and your life can kind of become a little bit more revolved around your work life. But again, you have to figure out what the expectations are before you start and try to create some really strict barriers so that way it doesn't creep into your to things that weren't expected before you join the company. So the other things is you can be a little bit difficult to find these jobs if you don't know where to look, and you're essentially not your own boss. You're going to be working for somebody else, but the way I like to frame it is, hey, you're getting paid pretty good money in a lot of cases to learn some experience, to essentially learn some skills that you can use later on in life. So the best remote job sites, if you're looking for finding a remote job with a startup, is going to be globalcareer.io. This is my website. It has a lot of great non-technical remote jobs. Then angel.co. This is going to be another great one where you can actually, the thing I love about this site is you can see the salary ranges to figure out what the jobs are actually paying, how much money they're paying, what are some of the benefits. So they do a really good job of showcasing that. The difference between these two are Angel.co is going to be more venture capital, meaning they've raised millions of dollars, where globalcareer.io is mostly going to be bootstrapped, but does have a kind of a blend of those sites. And when I say bootstrapped, it means that it's smaller companies that are focused on making a profit, right? Where a lot of VC funded companies don't make profit for 5 to 10 years, or if ever. Then the last but not least one is Dynamite Jobs. It's just dynamitejobs.com. This is another fantastic remote job website where you can find smaller companies. Sometimes these companies have 2 or 3 employees, but you can make a good salary. You can have a ton of flexibility and you can really make a big impact and get in early on some really cool projects. So if you're looking at the job hunt, I would say try to figure out outside of LinkedIn, as I know that's become kind of the big place, try to spend 25% on each one. 25% on LinkedIn, 25% on another one. Because the other big mistake I see is everyone just single click applies on LinkedIn and they don't get good results because they're not diversifying their actual job submission website. So make sure you're doing a blended option here where you're using multiple sources, right? And then one last thing here. The cool thing about some of these is on LinkedIn, you might be competing with thousands of people that applied for the same job. On Dynamite Jobs, you might be competing with 30 people, right? So it's a little bit different, and your odds are just going to be a little bit more in your favor. So that's why it's so important to diversify. Number 3 is freelancing. Again, there's so many things that you can do with freelancing. You can become a writer. You can do technical stuff, video editing, content creation. There are so many opportunities out there, especially for digital marketing as well. The cool thing about freelancing is you have more flexibility. You're your own boss, you're self-employed, and it's fairly easy to get started, right? But the biggest difference is you kind of need to have some skill set. You need to have one skill set or 2 skill sets that you can really offer to the freelance marketplace to make sure that you're able to go ahead and offer them something of value where you can start landing clients. And so the pros and cons versus freelancing versus a remote job, again, if you don't have a lot of skill sets, I would say start off finding a remote job that's something that you're interested in and something that you want to develop skills in. So the pros about freelancing is you get to choose who your clients are. You get to choose who you work with. Where a remote job, you might be stuck with your employees or your boss, but freelancing, you can say no to people. You can say, hey, this just doesn't seem like it's going to be a good fit. It's fairly easy to get started financially. You don't need a lot. Don't need to worry about some complicated business structure. You can go ahead and just start worrying about landing your first couple clients. And then from there, you can offer a wide range of services, writing, assistant, VA, there's so many great assistant jobs, marketing jobs out there as a freelancing. And the downside is there's a lot of ups and downs with freelancing where With a remote job, you might get that consistent income every month, but with freelancing, you could have a huge month followed by a down month where you're not really making any money. And the reason this happens is because you spend 1 month searching for clients. Month two, you landed the clients and you're fulfilling the work that is needed by them. And then after that contract ends, you're having to kind of do that cycle over and over again. Now, there's a lot of ways to kind of fix this, but that is a very common thing that most freelancers experience. The second thing is it can be kind of hard to build a portfolio of experience. You're basically reliant on certain platforms, and you need to figure out how to build a portfolio of experience. You need to figure out how to make case studies, get testimonials from clients, and then leverage those into actually landing more clients, right? The next, the very last thing that's kind of on the con side is you're self-employed, so there's going to be more out-of-pocket expenses. You essentially need to pay for your own insurance, any other extra business costs and stuff like that. And what I suggest to a lot of people is it's not so black and white, right? You don't have to do one or the other. You can get a remote job and then on the weekends try your hand in freelancing. You don't have to do one or the other. And I don't suggest people to just, quit their day job and try to start freelancing. I would suggest to build a side hustle with whether it's with freelancing or with entrepreneurship. And then when you have it at a certain level, then you can kind of make that transition. So here's a few really good resources in far as freelancing. Upwork.com is the biggest freelancing site out there. There's millions of users. They actually fund billions of dollars of transactions. And I'm not sure if people are following the job market, but there is a huge shift into freelancing right now. The main reason behind this is a lot of Fortune 500 companies are seeing that, hey, we can hire somebody to do the task for 3 to 6 months instead of paying a yearly salaried person. And the pro for the freelancer is they can get a higher per hour or per kind of contract. So it's kind of a win-win for everyone. And it's becoming a little bit more popular now to hire freelancers versus just hiring a full-time employee. Again, I see a hybrid structure as the kind of the near future for most big companies and most even medium and small companies, right? The next two are going to be People Per Hour and freelancer.com. Those two are good, but again, if I had to choose one, I would say start off with Upwork, build a portfolio, start getting your clients, and just focus on one platform. So number four is entrepreneurship. And again, this is my favorite. This is again how I kind of pivoted. I was building remote startups from scratch and also helping build my own companies from scratch, right? So I developed over 4 or 5 years a very unique skill set with digital marketing. And the cool thing about my experience was I didn't just have one sort of area of digital marketing. I had experience with sales, marketing, and full stack marketing. So media buying, running Facebook ads, social media, creating content, writing content, and email marketing. So I had a really good scope. And the cool thing about this is almost every business out there falls into like 3 or 4 main categories. It's marketing, sales, communication, actually, dealing with the customers. And then you have to have the product, right? The product kind of is in the middle, and the three main pillars are marketing, sales, and customer service. So once you have some skill set in there, I would say marketing and sales are probably the highest leverage skill sets to have when you're getting into entrepreneurship. That's going to be something that is going to help you so much if you're looking to build your own business. And when you say entrepreneurship, there's a lot of different paths you can take. The one that I have the most experience with is called like bootstrapped entrepreneurship, which is essentially building businesses to make a profit. So day one, your goal is to have a business that makes money. And that money is not just revenue, but it's actual profit. And then you can take that profit to reinvest and grow and scale the business. A lot of people are familiar with venture capital backed businesses. This is going to be the Twitter, the LinkedIn, the Uber. And again, you don't need to be the next Uber. Not to say that you can't build a big, impactful business, but there's more ways to do it. You don't have to go out and raise hundreds of millions of dollars. And I would say that most people should probably start off trying to bootstrap a business, make it profitable. And then in the future, if venture capital is the best option, you can pursue that. And again, a lot of people get a little bit scared about entrepreneurship with building a business. You can figure this out within a month. You can validate your idea. And I follow a lot of creators who validated ideas over weekends or in a week. So they have an idea, they build a landing page of the idea and product or service, and then they just start testing it to see if people are going to buy this product. The people who buy it, they either deliver the service or they refund them, just saying, "Hey, we're still building the product." And this is essentially the Kickstarter model, right? On Kickstarter, they don't have the product built yet. They get the money, they make sure it's validated, then they go out and make it. So you can do this. And if you have that great idea, I suggest trying to build the MVP version of it in a month, validate it, see if it's a good idea, see if the marketplace responds to it. And the way you figure out if people respond to it is if they buy the product or service. So moving on, outside of the VC, the bootstrapping, we also have buying versus building. I've helped people buy and sell over $120 million worth of online businesses. There's a huge realm out there to buy already profitable businesses. Again, you usually need, 150 to 200K to get started in this sort of arena, but it can be a really lucrative route because most businesses I've seen really take 2 to 3 years to get up and running. And you can buy these businesses that have already gone through that phase. So just to kind of recap, if you're looking to get started, if you do have that business idea, and now that you're in college is the best time, you've got a lot of free time to try this out, to try to see if your business idea is worthwhile. And what I've done in the past is I survey my ideal clients, have them fill out a free survey. Then what I'll do is I'll build the minimal viable product, an MVP, and then I'll say, "Hey, you filled out this survey. Would you like to try this product or service that I just built?" And you can get people on the phone, give them a short little sales pitch and overview of the product and service, and see if they buy it. If they give you some feedback like, "Hey, I would buy this if it did X, Y, and Z," then you can go ahead and test this, then make adjustments, tweak, and kind of go through this process to build a product that is a good fit for the marketplace. So, product market fit is some of the hardest thing out there. That's why it's so important to do it quickly and see if your idea is validated or not. So, the pros and cons of entrepreneurship, the biggest pro is you have uncapped earning potential, meaning at a remote job, you really can expect a 10 or 15% raise. If you switch companies, maybe 20% increase in your income. With entrepreneurship, the sky really is the limit. You can earn as much as you're willing to make in your business. Again, some businesses will have earning caps, but a lot of times there isn't any limitation there. The second thing is you can make your own schedule and you can hire replacements. So let's say you have a background in marketing and you love marketing, but you don't really like sales and customer service. You can continue running the marketing side of the business and then outsource and hire people to run the sales and marketing. And again, there's a lot of creative ways to do this. For example, I have products and businesses where we hire commission only salespeople. So there's a whole realm of industry out there that only want to work in commission only because they can make more money doing it. So there's a lot of cool ways. And the great thing about commission only is it really lets you scale up and scale down as the business is growing, right? So the another pro is some online businesses don't require a lot of capital. Again, I think there's this really wrong stigma that you need $1 million to start a business. I've started pretty much every business with under $1,000. So you don't need a huge amount of capital to start a profitable and successful online business. It can get started for as little as $1,000, right? On the flip side, there are cons to this, right? There's a lot more risk involved. You do have some financial skin in the game, but the biggest risk I see with a lot of entrepreneurs is they spend 2 to 3 years developing a product, working on a software, and they've never tested it out to see if people actually want this software. So that's the biggest risk I see is time and money. And it can take a while to recoup any initial investment, right? It can take you some time, especially if you don't have a really strong product market fit. It can take you some time to figure that out. And then last, you do require multiple different skill sets. Like you don't have to be a master at everything, but you should at least understand one of the three areas pretty well. And I keep mentioning sales and marketing are probably the best areas to be familiar with because those are usually the most expensive areas to hire for. And if you're really good at a few of those things, you can be great in marketing, but just understanding how the sales process works and how the customer service process works is going to be crucial to having a successful business, right? Because you need to know how to do it yourself before you can teach somebody else how to do it. And basically, if you're looking to get into entrepreneurship, there's a few good sites out there. Authority Hacker, Empire Flippers. This is the company that I helped build. I exited from there in 2020, but they have so many great free resources about buying and selling online businesses and just about understanding how to make money online. How do people make money with online businesses? And then last but not least, Diggity Marketing, another great SEO person in the space who talks about how to make money through search engine optimization. So all three of those sites are great. And again, I can send over a link to these slides somewhere. So that way you guys have it if you want to go back and review these. So I'll make sure to send that over towards the end here. So we talked about study abroad a bit. So I guess what we'll do is get straight into the question and answer. I know we've got a little bit more time, but I'll go ahead and I guess open it up for everyone now. If you have any questions, Stephanie, I'm not sure how you guys usually run this. If you use the question and answer feature of Zoom, or if you just use the chat feature.
Yeah, I think we can use the chat. So go ahead and ask any questions that you may have. I'll kind of just get us started off with a question, Mike, if you don't mind. Going back to originally when you decided to study abroad, how did you decide, which program to go on? Did you have any fears about going abroad for a month, and kind of what was that process for you like?
Yeah, so great question. I'm originally from Wildwood, Missouri, so like I didn't really even travel on a plane till I was like 18. So it can feel scary no matter how much you've traveled. Studying abroad can be a little bit, scared. There's unknowns. It's different culture. You're going to be doing a lot while you're there. And essentially, what happened was I took my first trip over to Europe with my dad and my brother the summer prior to Italy. And I got a small taste of Italian culture, food, the kind of day to day life. But it was a very short, trip. We were over in Europe for like 2 or 3 weeks total. And so that gave me the first taste where I was like, oh, I really love Italy. So I wanted to go back there. And so I started looking around, seeing what options were out there. And when I was at the University of Missouri, my roommate was named Mario and he wanted to study abroad as well. So we looked at the options and we both just kind of, he was taking Italian classes, he had Italian heritage. And we both just kind of looked at the program as like, hey, this seems like a great option. We knew a few other people in the finance and real estate, courses that we were taking. And the cool thing about it was we were going to get ahead, right? So we got ahead with taking these summer courses. So Italy was the clear option for that, but there are so many great other options for each destination, right? Each place has a really amazing sort of option. And the thing I love about Prague as well as being like the study abroad manager is it's really central. You're 4 hour train ride away from like 4 or 5 countries. So you can be in Germany, uh, you can be in Austria, you can be in Hungary and not that far, Bratislava, Slovakia. So there's a lot of really cool central day trips you can do from Prague. And Prague just is one of the most beautiful cities on earth after visiting 100 countries. So that's kind of how I got started with it. And again, the way I was able to kind of help make this worthwhile was studying abroad is the same price as if you, let's say you just lived in Columbia, Missouri for the summer, it's about the same cost. The only big extra expenses is going to be that flight overseas. It's kind of the same tuition cost as you would spend for an hour. And again, unless things have changed since when I did it. But when you look at the hard cost of like spending a summer studying abroad versus spending a summer studying in Columbia, Missouri, it's not that much more, right? So they've got a really great sort of program figured out where you're getting extra credits, you're getting ahead, and the prices are really justified for how cool of an experience it is.
Thank you, Mike. So we did have a question. What was the scholarship mentioned earlier for study abroad? So, Mike, if you would like to kind of discuss your scholarship, and I can tell students how to apply for that.
Yeah. So basically, it's fairly straightforward. It's $1,000 scholarship. I believe it's the Swigunski scholarship. I forget. We changed the name recently.
Yeah,
I'll
I
have to
think
check.
it's Swagunski Global Careers, maybe.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
And all you have to do is, basically apply for that. After everyone applies, I believe there's a candidate list where they're selected. But essentially, you can go to the TCOB study abroad office, figure out what program is going to be the best fit for you, and then you can see, okay, here's the scholarship options. And the cool thing that I don't know is I don't know if you're able to apply for multiple scholarships, but I know there's at least a handful of options out there where you can apply for these scholarships. And usually it's requires you to kind of submit an essay, fill out an application, but it's something that I guarantee if you're interested in study abroad, you should 100% try to apply for it.
Yeah, yeah. So just to give a little bit more detail, so we've streamlined our scholarship process where all you have to do is fill out one application and then you'll be considered for all of the True College of Business study abroad scholarships. And like Mike said, you'll have a few questions and a lot of it you can copy and paste from your resume because we ask what honors and awards have you received? What's your work experience? What leadership roles do you have? And then we do have an essay where you describe, why do you want to go abroad and what do you hope to get out of the experience personally, but also academically and professionally. So not a hard application and definitely worth, the time to put into it. Um, Looks like the next question is which country have you lived in that has been the biggest learning experience for you?
Yeah, great question. I would say so. I've kind of like I've traveled to 100 countries, but I've lived extensively in let's just say five or six. That would be like Prague, Colombia, in Medellin, in South Korea, in Australia, New Zealand, and now in Tbilisi. And for those of you wondering, it's in the Republic of Georgia. So definitely go look it up on a map. And basically, I would say the biggest learning curve, culture shock for me was I'd been living overseas for 2 or 3 years, but I'd never really been to Asia. So going to South Korea, and I studied my MBA there. Again, if even if you want to do your master's or MBA overseas, I got a full ride scholarship. They paid for everything, my flight, my housing. They set me up with a job. There's a ton of cool opportunities out there, even if you want to go to grad school overseas. So I spent 2.5 years living in South Korea. And I would say that was the biggest culture shock for me because when I moved there, if you go to Seoul, the capital, there's so many more international friendly places. It's very English friendly. they've really developed and made it very easy for foreigners. But I was living in Gwangju, which is a bit of a smaller city. I think it's the fifth biggest city in Korea. And it was definitely like you're walking around and people are just kind of staring at you because this 6'3" white guy like walking around in the middle of South Korea. So it was like a bit of culture shock. Not as many people spoke English. It was really that area where I really had to learn to adapt. And it was really cool though, because once people realized that I was like going to be there in Korea for a long haul, they were just the most welcoming people ever. Like they treated me like family, like a younger brother, essentially in the MBA program. And so overall, Korea has been like a huge, huge recommendation for a great place to live. And again, if you want to kind of get an initial step into working and traveling, teaching English in Korea is one of the highest paid countries out there. So it can be a really good segue into kind of this lifestyle. The only thing I would say about that is it's hard to pivot. I would say if you get in for 1 or 2 years, then you can pivot into something else online. But if you stay there 5 or 10 years, it can be really hard to transition into something else, unless you just really love teaching, which some people do it, and it's a really great career path if you want to teach and live overseas. So hopefully that answers your question.
All right. And then the last question, oh, we have a few more. When looking to buy an existing online business and vetting options, what are some positives to look for and what are some red flags?
Wow, Lucas, great question. I can see you have some experience in this space already. So, really great question. Basically, what I look at is I kind of break down due diligence in a few different ways and like the vetting options. So, typically, what marketplace are you looking at? So, vetting and due diligence are slightly different. Vetting is going to be something that's typically done by a brokerage or a marketplace. And Empire Flippers, the company I mentioned before, they essentially vet the businesses for 4 to 6 weeks. They're checking the financial data, checking the SEO, the backlinks, making sure that it's in a niche that's actually a legitimate sort of type of business. And as far as like things that I look for, I'm going through every area of the business, right? I'm going through the website. I'm trying to see what their process looks like. I'm going through all the financial data and I'm looking for discrepancies, right? So let's say you're looking at the traffic data or the analytics of a business or a website, and they had a huge spike of visitors to this website. Well, you would think if the visitors 10x, the revenue or the profit for that month should also 10x. And essentially, what I'm doing is I'm looking for those discrepancies as I'm going through the business in the SEO, in the traffic, in the finances, looking at what the products looks like and kind of what is the actual moat around this business. What is the thing that's going to protect it? Looking at all those different aspects and then figuring out what questions can I ask the seller to see how they respond to these types of discrepancies, to these types of things that are happening in the industry. And so this has come to me like what the business model that I love the most is software. And the reason I love software businesses is because they have some of the biggest moats. For example, one of my prior acquisitions, we acquired a business, a software business, who somebody had been building for over 10 years. To build this business for scratch would have taken 2 to 3 years and likely $500,000 to just build it from scratch, right? So we were able to acquire something that's already cash flowing, already making good money, and had a lot of opportunities for growth in a fairly evergreen niche. So that's kind of like the lens that I look at as far as like buying online businesses. And as far as other red flags, each business model is going to have so many different things to look out for. But I would say, yeah, just like any certain discrepancies that you can find in any of those key areas of the business. And one of the things that I also look out for is like, actually buy the product, go through it, see if you can reach out and find reviews on Reddit, see what people are saying about this type of product or service. Because again, if you're using a vetted marketplace, that's going to just be a much better realm of protection than going on some other marketplaces that, are kind of like Craigslist, where you can just say whatever, oh, my business made this amount, and nobody is checking that, right? So that happens a lot, and that's where what happens a lot of times is people get kind of burned because they're not using a reputable marketplace.
Okay, so we have two more questions, and that's probably all we have time for. So one was, what was the biggest difficulty you had to overcome when you decided to move abroad? And then the other is it easy or manageable to get past language barriers? So kind of goes together.
Yeah, good question. So as far as biggest difficulty, I would say like the family and friends type thing is going to be the hardest barrier, right? Like, I've had family members who had medical issues when I'm, a 30-hour flight away, right? That can be really scary, especially if it's a close member of your family, and the severity of that can be quite difficult. How you overcome that, again, it's really great. You can hop on a Zoom call with somebody, you can be face to face with them almost instantly. So it doesn't ever replace that in-person interaction, but it really can make up for it. And one of the things that I do now to kind of overcome that is, instead of traveling, 30 hours, I was like, hey, let's meet in the middle and like spend 3 or 4 weeks traveling around Italy together. Let's create some unique memories that, if I just traveled back home to St. Louis, we probably wouldn't have had those types of memories together with my family. So I would say that can kind of be a con that you can turn into a pro if done correctly. But that's likely going to be the biggest thing. And then also, I've moved to countries where I don't know a single person in the country, right? That is a very difficult thing for people who are maybe a little bit more introverted. I'm fairly extroverted, so it's a little bit easier, I think. And the way I overcome that is I always host networking events where I'm like, hey guys, I'm into marketing, I'm into hiking, I'm into basketball. Let's do that. And let's get like 5 to 10 people together. And that's how I've met some of my closest friends. It can be as simple as making a dinner reservation overseas and then promoting it, getting people on board through Facebook groups. So that was my biggest difficulty, a few of those things. But again, if you're doing this for 10 years, you're going to have hard stuff, right? But there's the lifestyle is definitely, in my opinion, outweighs any of the difficulties. As far as language barrier, I know a little bit of Spanish, which has been extremely helpful when I lived in Mexico or Colombia, and that's been very helpful. But honestly, so many people around the world, especially in Europe, because there's not like this one core language, almost everybody's second language is English. And a lot of people are actually really excited to talk to native English speakers. And then again, if you're hanging out with expats and a combination of locals, you likely have, maybe 60% of your friend group is locals, but 40% are expats or whatever sort of makeup you have. Typically, the people that are going to be interested in being friends with a foreigner are also going to know some English or have a huge desire to improve their English. So I would say, again, the language barrier can definitely be frustrating, and knowing a second language or just even knowing 10 or 20 phrases in a language can become extremely helpful. Um, I always say, like, if you're going to live in a country, just try to learn the top 100 most common phrases or words, and that can go so long. But now with this day and age, like almost every country, there's going to be somebody who can communicate in English. So we're really lucky in that sense because we can travel around the world, and English can get us so far.